Well, a very good morning, and thank you very much for joining us on GBS Morning Extra. It is the 12th day of the month of May 2020, and I'm really glad that we can do this morning. And today we are joined by Collins Bore. Collins Bore is an educationist, and he'll be helping us to discuss matters politics. And as you know, Kenyan politics, as usual, it's very unpredictable. And yesterday, the country saw something that, shocked many. But to many, like the likes of Mr. Murade, the former party, Jubilee party vice chairman, to him, everything, it's long overdue. Many people expected them to do this a long time ago. And Collins, what do you make of the situation in Jubilee? I know your political affiliation, which I will not say on national TV, but it's your constitutional right. What do you make of the Jubilee wrangles and what the turn that they have now taken?
So, Timothy, you are aware that, as we have always said, this was something that was to happen. The Jubilee wrangles have been there for a long time, actually. And it was only a matter of time that the president would crack the whip. And I think the president, so to say, was fed up with what was happening in both the National Assembly and the Senate, and he had to take control of both of these particular houses. You are aware that, of course, the deputy president camp has been very vocal and critical of the government that they are part of. And I think what the president did was to take control of the party so that he can be able to have people who he can work with, who are, friendly to the party and to the government. So this was something that was prone to happen. Remember, all these wrangles started immediately after the so much, advertised, if I may say so, handshake. Because after that, this is when we now had the deputy president side feeling sidelined and all that. And it was only a matter of time that these wrangles will lead to the breakup, and the divorce has been messy and noisy, as you can see.
Would you really say, okay, I don't know why, it's fine to look at it from that perspective, but then one person would also look at the handshake, the March 5th handshake, as something that brought Kenyans together and not something that sparked the beginning of a fall down or the beginning of a division among Kenyans. But then that is what is being termed by, of course, those who are allied to the deputy president feel that it is the handshake that brought the wars into the party. But then some people look at it in a different way. Some people think that, the deputy president, overstepped his position. By trying to, make himself equal with the president. And some have even been talking of Kenya as having no co-presidency. There's nothing like a co-presidency. And when you look at what the deputy president has been doing and the way he's been carrying himself out, is he's been, trying to equal himself, according to some people, with the president. And talking of this as something of, viewing himself as an equal to the president. For instance, if you have the deputy president of a country going out in the media and telling the media that he is going nowhere because he was not appointed by anyone, he was elected by Kenyans just like any other person. What does that mean? That's very serious rhetoric.
Really, I want to agree with you. There is one law in the 48 laws of power that says never outshine your boss. Yes. And I think that's what the deputy president might have done, although he did not come out clearly to be seen as though he's, acting as a co-president. But of course, you could see from the onset that his campaigns had already started so early. And that is what may have angered and triggered all these differences, because you are aware that the president was focused on delivering the Big Four agenda. He was focused on building his legacy. But here we have a principal assistant who is supposed to be, there with the president to ensure that he does that. but he seems to be taking a different direction. And I think that is where the rain started beating. And the president really saw that probably the deputy president was not really focused on the legacy as such, but he was focused on building his ambitions. So
which
I
Collins,
agree with you to
if I may interrupt, which actually many people saw as, I would say, a sabotage to the Big Four agenda, because here you have a deputy who is supposed to be supporting you, but then he's busy campaigning for 2022. That's about 2 years ago. Who knows what will happen in 2022? I know they are politicians. I know they have ambitions, but hey, look at it. We even have a pandemic right now. We don't know when the quarantine is going to end. You know, people are already talking about 2022, and this started not the other day. This started way even before the pandemic came.
Yes, really, it was misplaced priorities. If you ask me, it was not the right thing to do. At the moment, it was good to deal with the current situation that we are having. And I agree that indeed the deputy president might have started his campaigns early, but sometimes also I think the constitution needs to be very clear on some of the roles of these office holders. Because when you are the deputy president, what are some of your roles? So that are they clearly outlined, or you just sometimes find yourself so idle as a deputy president? And that could be the reason as to why the deputy president was all over the country, you know, in the quote unquote development tours and all that. So I think from the onset we need to look at it that way, that the constitution is really not clear on some of the duties that the deputy president should perform, because he has been made to appear as though he's somebody who only becomes a principal assistant and performs the duties of the president when he's not there, but all the time the president has been there. So he seems to have been left without anything to do, if you ask me, and that is why he had involved himself in so much politics and all that.
Some people are saying, I've spoken to a few people who share your view. Some people have the feeling that, when you go way, a little bit some years back, you realize that, these committees, especially the presidential delivery unit that, issues to do with development, this was taken and handed over to the super CS, as some people would like to call him, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, and positions that ideally one would expect a deputy to run for the president. That's a deputy president. But then this is taken and given to a CS. And of late, even if and right after that, then we saw the deputy president starting to distance himself even more. Although at that time, he had also begun, the campaign spree and not really focusing on development issues, which brought some tussle. If you can remember, Matiang'i was there on the other side, claiming to be the legitimate, overseer of government development projects. And here we are having a deputy president who says, nimetumwa, nikuje na rais, nikuje nizindue miradi hii ya maendeleo. And then you are confused. Do you think that this was a making also some part Uhuru, is to blame for what Ruto has become?
I think at some point, really, the president thought it wise to involve his cabinet secretaries in delivering his Big Four agenda, because he, at some point, lost trust in the deputy president, who he thought would be very key in ensuring that he pushes for the Big Four agenda. But instead, the deputy president seemed to have focused more on the 2022 politics. So what the president decided to do probably was to incorporate the likes of the good CS of Interior, that is Dr. Fred Matiang'i, so that he can lead some of these committees that are tasked with development in the country. And that is now where the deputy president was left jobless, if you ask me, with nothing to do. And that is why he had to crisscross the country, telling people that we are still together with the president. He has sent me with this and this, and you have heard him many times even take contribution and say that some of the president, but he has been criticized and told that he should stop campaigning and all that. So I think the deputy president might have missed the point when he started campaigning, and that is why the president lost trust in him and had to use his appointment, who are key in delivering his Big Four agenda. But again, you cannot stop to read politics in whatever is happening, right? They could be, and there are those who saw it as though there is a making of the president Matiang'i, quote unquote, because of course there are those who have seen how the CS has been vocal, how the president has made him powerful and all that. So the president seemed to have had his favorites in all this, and probably the deputy president is slowly fading away from the mind of the president.
Uh-huh. Now, the latest happenings, and this happened yesterday, and it's something that shocked some people, not all people. Some saw it coming, like we had Murade claim yesterday in one of the interviews that he had with one media house, one local media house, that, it was a long overdue. It was something that was supposed to, to have happened a long time ago. The kicking out of Murkomen and other key allies of the deputy president from these Senate committees, and also from leading also positions of leadership in the Senate. What do you make of that?
Yes, really, these are things that we knew would happen, eh? And there are things that had already been there. Of course, Murkomen and the good senator of Elgeyo Marakwet and that of Nakuru, we know, have been very critical of the government, even in the House, at the floor of the House, and even outside there. Recently, you are aware that Murkomen was opposed to what he terms as militarization of the Nairobi County, something that was initiated by the president, and of course the decision to hand over some of the administrative functions of the Nairobi County to a military person and all that. So some of the initiatives that have been introduced by government that are meant to be supported by the majority leader seem to have been opposed by the same leader who should speak on behalf of government in the House. And I think that is where the president thought that it was important to have somebody who shares in the vision of the government being in the House leadership. And you are aware that majority of the senators that are affiliated to Jubilee are friends of the deputy president. And that is why, in my view, the president had to seek new friends. And these new friends could not be found anywhere else but from his original party, that is KANU. And that is why he had to incorporate the likes of Samuel Pogistio, the likes of Gideon Moy, so that they can now have a common vision as far as the agenda of the House is concerned. And remember, there was a PG that had been called some times back. I don't remember actually the date, but then it was again cancelled. And I think the agenda was the same, to crack the whip on those particular leaders that seemed to have gone against the president.
And it's funny because what you just mentioned, very important. Here we have a majority leader, and to make the matters worse, a majority leader in parliament and a whip in parliament who are against the president's or the government, the party leader's policies. Then what's the use? I mean, the work of the whip is to, of course, as the name suggests, to whip members, to vote for bills and, to pass legislation in favor of the ruling party, of course. But then when you have, a whip and a majority leader in parliament who don't share the same values with the party leadership, then I think it was long overdue. It was something that had to be done. If it were you, Collins, would you keep such people? I don't think so.
Really, it would be hard to keep such kind of people because, of course, you would want somebody who shares in your vision, somebody who preaches what you say. And again, if you look at the argument from the likes of Murkomen and Susan Kihika, they would want to say that the president told them at some point that they are free to air out any kind of views. But I think as leaders in the House, who are now representatives of government, if you will, they should be at the forefront in pushing for those particular agendas in the Senate and the National Assembly. So the president, to some good extent, was justified in what he did. Probably might not have, gone against the party's, constitution and all that, because we are not aware whether all the procedures were followed in doing this. But it might have been justified to a good extent in having some of those leadership positions stripped so that they can be given to people who can work with him. So I really see where the president is coming from as far as change of the leadership is concerned. Probably the timing might have been wrong because there are those of us who believe that probably this was not the right time to do that. We are in the middle of a crisis. And we shouldn't, now the country's attention has been shifted from coronavirus, we are now in politics. And that would be the daily dose from today. You are going to see the deputy president responding, the deputy president allies coming out, the guns blazing and all that. So we have now gotten back to the campaign trail, full swing, courtesy of the president of Kenya.
Well, maybe wisdom told him that you strike the hammer while the iron is still hot. And I think that's exactly what he did. I don't know who advised him about that, but then something that I'm really curious also about, entering into a post-election coalition agreement with KANU as a party. Bore, what do you make of this? What do you make of this?
President Moi once told us that KANU was going to rule this country for the next 100 years, and he couldn't be more right, because we are seeing that happening already, right?
Yes.
So, and of course, you remember that in 2017 elections, Gideon Moi, together with the KANU brigade, campaigned for the president. Of course, they were part of the Jubillee party and the coalition, I think, was something that was made out of what happened in 2017. Because if you remember what the president said, and you can refer to some of those clips, the president told them that when the government is formed, mutakuwa ndani ya serikali. And I think that is what he has now decided to make it happen. And that is why we already have some of the allies of Gideon Moi now brought on board. We have Samuel Pogisio, the senator of West Pokot, as the new majority leader in the Senate.
Yes.
And already Gideon Moi is the leader of a House committee, is the leader of the ICT committee in the Senate. So I think he has decided to incorporate them. But again, no one can be stopped from reading politics in all this, because if you ask me really, I think what is happening is Gideon Moi is being groomed for the top seat as a payback to what happened earlier. Because you remember in 2002, it is the President Moi, the former President Moi, fronted President Kenyatta as a candidate.
Yes.
And I think what the president is now doing is kulipa deni, and he has decided to start by what happened earlier before he comes to the other.
Wait a minute, so, Collins.
Yes.
Deni gani? Nani ako na deni ya mtu? Uchaguzi Kenya it's a democratic right. It's not a political deal that you make with people. It's about the Kenyans, who they want to vote for. But then, I mean, if I may go by what you're saying, then are you telling me that there's a possibility that we see Gideon Moi on the ballot in 2022? Should Uhuru decide not to go to the ballot? Is he trying to hand this over back to Gideon Moi?
Yes, really, and that is, in my view, what is happening already. The 2022 political ship is on, and Gideon Moi seems to have been the first person to have been recruited into it. And if you ask me again, Timothy, really, as much as we are a democratic country, but you must be alive and awake to the fact that presidents in this country most of them are made out of boardrooms, right? They are made out of boardrooms. People sit and decide that this is the kind of a person that we want. And I think the deep state, if I may say so, is in support of Gideon Moi. And they are now incorporating the likes of Kalonzo Musyoka. They are now incorporating the likes of Wetangula. You don't know what would happen in the coming future. So political realignments will happen. This is only the start, and the things are going to change. And in the decision by the president to bring on board Gideon Moi is telling, and is something that really raises eyebrows, because really that tells you that already Gideon Moi is part of the government and is going by all means to be part of the presidential race in 2022, because earlier on, of course, he has always talked of his ambitions to be president, and it seemed to have attracted the eyes of the president, who seems to support him in that.
Well, having said that, Bore, there's a clip I want to play of the former vice president, that's the Wiper leader, Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, alluding to the agreement that they have entered into with KANU to work together going forward. Let's listen in.
That Wiper will be ready to enter into a cooperation agreement with both KANU and Jubilee when that time comes. But we are open. We are open to that. But right now, of course, we are guided by the provisions of the coalition agreement we have within NASA. And we agreed that we need to be able to open negotiations and be able to move in that direction. So we already set, but the only thing is you need to look at the legalities of this issue. We have an existing coalition agreement within NASA, and then the need also to promote national cohesion. We are looking into this, and it doesn't necessarily mean you kill opposition in this country. Far from it.
Well, that's Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka for you. Would you say that he's planning kupita katikati yao tena na wasimuone hapa?
Yes, of course, Kalonzo he knows how to do it perfectly well, and I'm telling you, he is going to be part of the government so very soon. So of course, NASA is dead, and is no longer existent. So we shouldn't be talking of NASA right now. And the good thing about NASA is that it was a coalition. It's not the same as Jubilee, where all the parties were collapsed. So
sure.
The deal that was there in NASA no longer exists, and Kalonzo Musyoka needs to find new friends, just as Raila and the likes of Wetangula needs to. So I think what is happening, Kalonzo Musyoka is going to sign a post-election pact with Jubilee. And it was not by coincidence that after the alleged meeting between Senator Gideon Moi and President Uhuru Kenyatta, we saw him go and join the Wiper leader. So it's telling you that slowly and slowly, the opposition is being brought on board. And soon and very soon, the deputy president will be the new opposition leader in this country, because all the parties that we have are going to join government very soon, and Kalonzo Musyoka will be part of it, and you never know what position he might agree to, because of course the BBI is still on course, and you have listened to the likes of Atwoli, Kinamoratha, and what they have been preaching, expanding the executive. So if all these particular leaders are promised these top seats, what stops them from joining government if they are sure they are going to be part of it in the near future? So if you ask me, these are things that will happen, and we are only waiting for it to materialize. We are going to see very many of them coming on board, not only Kalonzo Musyoka, but probably even the likes of Kina Mudavadi. You know, Mudavadi is somebody who also is easily, I can say that Mudavadi is gullible. He is easily swayed, and he can always join government anytime.
Do you think so, Warren? Do you think so? I mean,
yes,
Madividi, so far, I mean, according to my own opinion, he's proved to be one of the, independent political leaders who have been, very adamant with his, with his principles, and he's very focused, if I may call him that. It's just that his politics is not that politics of noise. He's a guy who is principled and, takes his time before he decides to go into something. But one thing I'd like also to ask you, Bore, what do we make of Raila Odinga in this kind of a coalition? Gideon Moi coming together to join hands with President Uhuru Kenyatta. I mean, we were hoping that a coalition, the latest coalition we expected to be announced was an ODM Jubilee coalition. But here we are now. We are talking about KANU and Jubilee.
I want to refuse that Raila Odinga may not have been privy to what was happening. Raila Odinga might have been consulted in all these particular formations. And you are aware that ODM party is such a very huge party in this country that cannot be taken for granted. And really, there are those positions that we have in the National Assembly and the Senate that are usually set aside for opposition. So when you join government, what are you really telling us? That you are no longer part of the opposition, and probably you are going to relinquish all those positions. So the ODM party had to be very cautious, and has to be very cautious as at now in coming to join government, because it is the opposition that we know, probably on paper, because in reality, of course, we no longer have a five-branch opposition that we used to. So if going by the look of things, I think the ODM party will only join Jubilee when we are almost close to the election, because when the campaigns will have started full swing, then they can now form a post-coalition pact. But as at now, they still want to appear as though they are the opposition party in parliament.
Raila Odinga, like you mentioned earlier, is being blamed for, dining with the president and edging out the deputy president, William Ruto. But when you listen to him, he doesn't think so. I mean, according to his own party secretary general, Bwana Edwin Sifuna, the prime minister sacrificed so that, the country can get back to normalcy and that, lives can go on as usual. But then on the other side, he's being blamed for the wrangles that are in Jubilee. And, looking further, you spoke about those people who, you call them the deep state. Recently, there was, lunch that was being served in some people's backyards somewhere in Karen. The likes of Atuolia were in attendance in that meeting. And we cannot refute that, the lunch meeting was even touted and supported by the very controversial former vice chairman of Jubilee Party, Mr. David Murathe. What is going on? Because also, I mean, looking at it largely, Bori, I want you to look at it in this perspective. Just, I think early this week or last week, we had the wrangles in, the House committees, and the issue of our good friend Ledama Olekina being edged out, and everybody blamed the ODM for not being democratic, and so on and so forth. Now, again, still in the Senate, another topple. We see someone else being edged out, and we had him yesterday, Mr. Murkomen, saying that he will not easily let go of his position. And today, actually, is the Senate is going to be formally presented, and this document is going to be presented formally. The names are going to be presented formally to the Senate of the House, and he's going to make a reading from the seat. What does that mean for Murkomen?
Yes, first I want to say that Moradari is still the vice chair of Jubilee Party, right? He said that he sent his resignation to President Uhuru, but President Uhuru did not respond. And therefore, he says that he remains to be the vice chair of Jubilee Party, if you will. But having said that, I think also it's important to really start by saying that in this country, if you don't toe the line in the party, then you are regarded as someone who is an outsider in that party, and you cannot enjoy some of the privileges that come with it. Of course, what happened to Senator Ledama was obvious, because Senator Ledama seems to have gone against the principles of ODM, and that's why he had to be edged out of the Public Accounts Committee. The same happened to our good friend Wetangula sometimes back, when he was edged out as the minority leader, and that given to James Orengo when he came up with this now famously known to be messy, noisy, and with casualties. So those are things that we expected to happen. So for Murkomen, he is not going down without a fight. He has to fight and bounce back. He has to put his decision. Of course, you are aware that his official vehicle has been taken away from him, and he therefore remains to be just a senator for Elgeyo Marakwet without any other position in the Senate. So we only wait to see what happens today, whether there will be, whether it will, even there is a meeting, there is the House Business Committee is sitting today, and that House Business Committee is to be chaired by the new majority leader. So let's see whether it is Samuel Poghisio who will chair it, or will it be Murkomen, because both of them seems to suggest that they are the majority leader. So it's only a matter of wait and see, so that we see how that unfolds. But I want to say that it's unfortunate that in this country, parties have become individual properties. And if you look at parties across the board, you must mention a certain individual for it to be a political party. You start with Jubilee Party. President Uhuru was fought to be in control of it. You cannot mention ODM without mentioning the name of Raila. You cannot mention ANC without mentioning the name of Mudavadi. You cannot mention NAC without mentioning Charity Ngilu, and all those other parties that we have. So really, it's high time we stop the individual party systems and really did our politics that like what we have in mature states. Because I would want to see a country where we have an opposition that is vibrant and can never go into a handshake with government. Because the moment you dine with government, you are simply telling us that you no longer believe in your ideals and you subscribe to those of the government that of the day, and that should never happen. At one point, you must stick to the constitutional threshold that requires you to offer checks and balances to government.
But then, Bore, you can offer checks and balances while, still also sometimes agreeing to some bipartisan, agreements or legislation. I mean, what Raila did, largely can be looked at as a bipartisan decision. Yes, the parties have wrangles and differences, but then for the good of the country, let's shake hands. Let's bring back peace. Shaking hands doesn't mean that now there's no opposition, does it?
Really, there is no opposition. If you ask me right now, we don't have a vibrant opposition. It is just there in theory, but in practical, we don't have opposition anymore. In fact, we already have people who are staunch supporters of the president right now in the opposition, and that should not happen because opposition offers alternative leadership. It doesn't mean they had their manifesto, which was not similar to that of Jubilee. Yes. So what they should be doing is offering alternative leadership, not dining with the government of the day. Because the moment you want to agree with everything that the government does, even if it contravenes certain aspects of the constitution, that tells you that already you not know your role as opposition in this country. And let me tell you that politics in this country is all about self-interest. So if your interests are not catered for, you feel you should oppose the government. But if your interests are catered for, you want to be part of it. And that is what is happening in opposition right now. The only person that I think has been a bit vocal in the opposition, as you rightly put earlier on in this interview, is Mudavadi, because he seems to be the one who is offering some of these checks and balances. Remember what used to happen before the handshake? Any corruption allegation that used to be brought to public was usually done by the former prime minister, right? We no longer see him vibrant in talking about some of these issues. In fact, he has become a defender of the Jubilee party and will be telling us that the president is right here. The president, we wanted to see opposition coming in place at this very critical moment where we are talking of squandering of resources in the fight against this pandemic. But we don't have that happening. The civil society in this country has been silenced. The opposition has been silenced. So we don't have any person who offers checks and balances. And I think that is very wrong. And we should never enter into handshake anymore in this country. Our elections first must ensure that they are free and fair so that we have a government that is legitimate. Then we have an opposition that is empowered that can offer checks and balances without being part of the government, because that is gross misconduct. Being part of a government of the day, yet you call yourself opposition. It's unheard of, and it has never happened in any kind of democracy.
But, okay, I would partly agree with what you're saying, but then, I mean, following the proceedings of Parliament, following the proceedings of, the Senate, you will agree with me that indeed still there are legislators who discuss issues and who oppose also some government, driven policies that they don't feel like, are good, are in favor of the country. We are talking of people, the likes of Junet Mohammed. We're talking about people like John Badi. If you've been following proceedings in Parliament recently, they've been very vocal, especially on the way that the government is handling the COVID-19 emergency funds and how the government is also carrying out the curfews and so on and so forth. I mean, still, these are checks and balances, aren't they?
I think very many people were shocked when they had John Badi and Junet Mohammed make such kind of remarks, because they expected them to sing to the tune of government.
Yeah, that's why we shouldn't rush to decide that the opposition has been silent. I mean, if you look at it broadly, then don't you think that why people are saying that the opposition is silent is because these guys entered into this, what do we call it? The BBI agreement with the government, and on that they are reading from the same script. But on other issues, you still find them being vocal and, criticizing the government where need be.
But largely, if you look at the opposition that we have had right now, it's not the same opposition that we had in between 2013 and 2017, because it had gotten to a point where we had turned into a bipartisan, National Assembly and a Senate. And it is only recently that all the senators from both government, those who are in Jubilee and those in opposition, came out blaming the government on what is happening as far as the containment of this virus is concerned. So it was not only the opposition leaders who are calling for the government to act, but also those who are in Jubilee party. So if you ask me really what is happening right now is not that the opposition seems to be doing what it's supposed to be doing, because they have weighty issues that they should be talking about. They are the same opposition that now should be questioning the issue of the money that is being borrowed day in, day out by the Jubilee government to fund some of this fight against this COVID-19 and all that. They should be in the forefront in calling for accountability and all that, because they are the opposition. So if you now leave it to be spent the way it is spent, then you are telling us that you are now okay with whatever happens in government. Let's not only talking of the issues of masks, like what Junet was talking about in Parliament. We want to see them now coming out and talking about these weighty issues. Gone are the days we will see them calling press conferences to address some of these issues. The last time, I don't remember the last time the opposition called for a press conference to address some of the challenges that we have, some of the issues that we have in government. In fact, Junet Mohammed has become, you remember even during the launch of the BBI, he was the MC. So he has been made a darling of the Jubilee party and all
But
that. And has
maybe that's how you'd like to look at it, Bore, but some people would argue that Junet Mohammed is actually among the few people who knew what was going to happen prior to the handshake. And if you can remember at the steps of Arambe House on that day in March 5th, you realize that he was almost, I think he was the only ODM party member present in that meeting, together with the daughter of the, the former prime minister. I mean, that's someone who knew a lot about the handshake more than anyone else. Wouldn't it just be, common sense to just give such an opportunity to someone who's been throughout the process in the initial stages before anyone even knew about it?
Junet Mohammed is an equal of Moses Kuria in Jubilee. Those are he's a close confidant of Raila Odinga, somebody who has mentored him since the days when he was a mayor. I think he was a mayor in Nyanza then.
Yeah, in Migori, when he
old days in Migori.
Yeah, he was fresh from college.
I think, yeah, that's true. So he has become a very close confidant of the former prime minister. But in politics, you see, you have to have people who can always say things that you cannot say as a leader in public. So Junet Mohammed has decided to be, quote unquote, the guinea pig when it comes to talking of certain aspects that the former prime minister cannot say in public. And that also applies to the likes of Moses Kuria in Jubilee. They will always say things that the deputy president cannot say in person. So I don't think that really Junet Mohammed is somebody you can count on as somebody who does some of these things independently. He talks on behalf of other people, and in this case, on behalf of the former prime minister, saying things that the former prime minister cannot say in public. You look at the way even he emceed, the way he emceed that particular event, it was totally sham. I mean, really, and that is where the likes of Murkomen became so infuriated.
But I don't want I don't want us to go there, because I mean, if there's anything that, in my knowledge, I find that Jubilee people were not happy with on how the guy was doing was emceeing at Bomas of Kenya on that day, is when he just told one of the leaders, shida za Jubilee hizo ni za Jubilee, mtatatua huko kwenyu, sio hapa. This is a national event. I mean, that is actually what they took issue with, and I think if you'll agree with me. But then, having said that, Collins, do you think that, I mean, it's obvious right now to many Kenyans and to those people who are closely following the Kenyan politics that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when the deputy president will decide to come out. Of course, it's highly unlikely that he can be fired by the president, but then it's just a matter of him deciding to pack his things and, leave. There have been calls continuously. Let me bring in again the quoting Murathe, he should shape up or ship out. These are calls that have always been, with these top leaders in Jubilee Party, those who are seen to be, reading from the same script with his boss, President Uhuru Kenyatta. Are we likely to see the deputy president make that move? And how dangerous would that kind of a move be to him?
Really, I think the differences between the president and those of the deputy president are irreconcilable. They cannot be reconciled anymore. And therefore, according to, in my view, I think what the deputy president will have to do is to seek a new vehicle and outfit as he prepares to go for the 2022 politics, because he can no longer fight for space in Jubilee. Jubilee already has its owners, and he has to accept the fact that the president has taken control over it. Remember, the National Management Committee was, formally gazetted. The president has made the new changes in there. We have almost all the leaders the interim officials that we have in Jubilee being in support of the president. So the deputy president allies, if you listen to them, still talk of trying to fight for their space in Jubilee. But I think it will reach a time where they need to look for a new outfit so that they can now chart a way forward. Because again, if you look at one of the proposals of the BBI, because I want to look at it very broadly, one of the proposals of the BBI was to have the parties in this country suggesting some of the names of those people who sit in the IBC. So if we have Jubilee Party now going to suggest such a name, that name will probably be somebody who is friendly to President Uhuru Kenyatta and not the deputy president, and may not, take the interest of the party and all that. So I want to believe that the deputy president, by all means, might be forced to form his own political party, which may be a replica of the URP that, they folded sometimes back and joined the Jubilee Party. Because his stay in Jubilee is no longer tenable. He has become a refugee in that party. He's an outsider, and he has been made to be a person with an office but without responsibilities. And that's why you have seen recently the deputy president has been left without anything to do. He has just been left with, quoting Bible verses in his Twitter account. He has been reduced into somebody who only wants to invoke religion into whatever is happening in our Kenyan politics and all that, and he has no job to do. So as you say, the president cannot fire the deputy president, but I think he's pushing him to the limit and wants to force him to resign. And it's only a matter of time, and I really don't know whether the deputy president, your guess is as good as mine as to whether the deputy president will resign or not, because it is usually very easier to go for 2022 when you are in government than when you are outside. So it's really going to be very difficult decision for the deputy president to make.
But I think the carpet has been, removed under his feet, and he no longer has a standing in the party. I mean, just yesterday, a party PG, and you imagine, in the absence of him, what does that mean? That means he's not in, I mean, really. And we've not heard from him up to now, and it's quite worrying. What do you think is in his mind? And something also that I would like you to comment on as we conclude. According to media reports, only 11 out of 35 leaders or senators participated in that meeting in State House. What does that speak to you?
First, I think the deputy president, if I may start by your first question, right now is pondering on the next move that he needs to do. He really cannot afford to just make certain comments without having to consult his advisors. So it's only a matter of time that we'll see him probably come out together with his political allies and give the next move that they are going to make, whether in Jubilee or even outside, because of course, this is something that has touched on him directly. It's no longer about the indirect side shows that we used to have. The president has now thrown the egg on the face of the deputy president, and he has to react by all means. So we will see very much happening, probably press conferences coming up and all that. Then the other question that we are talking about is the issue of 11 senators who are allegedly to be to have been part of that. If you listen to the new majority whip, that is Irungu Kangata, he talked of 22 senators who are in State House. And he says that today before 8 p.m., 8 a.m., he will provide the media with a list, of
yeah.
all those senators who are part of that meeting, and they signed. And they are saying that there were 22, while the deputy president side also has a list of and allegedly over 20 senators who did not attend the meeting. So we don't know who is telling us the truth. We would want to see these senators coming out clearly and telling us whether they were part of the meeting or not, because we don't have accompanying. What usually happens in the State House page is that after every meeting that the president has, we have photos that are posted with an accompanying, explanation of what happened. But we didn't see this happening for the Jubilee Party PG that happened in State House.
Yeah.
So we don't know who's telling us the truth. We only would wait and see those senators who will say they were not part of it and those who will say they are part of it. But I want to say that this is something that had to happen by all means, whether the deputy president liked it or not. The president had made up his mind, and he was going to use all kind of, even if it meant that suspending the rule of law. The president was determined to ensure that he passed some of these particular, because that was the only agenda that was discussed. That was the main agenda, to oust these leaders and incorporate those who are friendly to the president into it. So it's only a matter of time. We will want to wait today. By the end of the day, we'll have known much. Today, in politics, a day is almost equal to 1,000 days. So today, there are going to be much happening. So we are going to see senators coming out and saying that we are not part of it, or whether they were part of it, and we'll make our conclusion then.
Bore, finally, I would like to know your comments. Do you think that this is one of the worst political mistakes that a political leader has ever made in this country? The move that the deputy president decided to take, going against his boss while still in government.
Really, I want to say that the deputy president might have been ill-advised in how to deal with this particular issue. And I think from where he is right now, he could be regretting on some of these actions, because he has always counted on the support of the president all through. If you listen to his interviews, he's somebody who has been saying that he has sacrificed a lot for the president. He has campaigned with him. He's saying that he's the only person who was behind the president in 2002 when he was conceding defeat, and that in 2013 he came with a first handshake and all that, and he has supported, and he expects the president to return the hand back. But it seems that he has lost the trust of the president, and he is largely to blame for this, because the president was calling for an end to the 2022 campaigns, but the deputy president seemed to defy it outrightly, and therefore the chicken might have come home to roost for him, because really he has not been a good deputy president to his boss, because we expected him to always do what the president expects him to do. And even in the fight against this pandemic, he could be in the forefront, but he has allowed himself to be reduced into a political campaigner for the 2022 politics, and he's no longer concerned about the government. So he could be regretting, really, because some of these actions are things that he could change. Because Eddie decided to support the president all through. I think the president will have been the first person to endorse him and say that this is my preferred candidate. He has been there with me. He has helped me build on my legacy, but the deputy president has failed to do that. And that is where the trust has gone. It has been lost, and he has to build on new friends, if I may say so that he can have hopes of clinching the 2022 seat.
Well, indeed, Collins Bore, thank you very much. And we'll be watching this. I mean, looking at how this all began, with after the handshake, there was a lot of noise. And that's when we started hearing of allegations of, attempts on his life. He was, entering into squabbles with the cabinet secretaries in the ministries, in his boss's cabinet. Then right after that, we saw now most of his work being transferred to the super CS. And then he was just turned into what you've rightfully said, just a guy who's running around quoting verses, doing harambes in churches and not really engaging directly on what we would expect a deputy president to actually engage in. And it's quite a pity that even in this time of the pandemic, when you look at other countries, when their leaders come out to address the nations, like when normally President Uhuru Kenyatta occasionally comes out to speak to us, we would expect that the deputy president is in the forefront of addressing the nation, condoning with the nation, offering guideline and also speaking to what they have discussed with the president, but he's nowhere to be seen. Like, I think since the coronavirus began, he's been away from the media, which he tried to come out one day and address the media on the COVID-19 from his Karen office, but he got a backlash for it, and I think that's when he also decided, all right, I won't do it again. And he decided to go silent because there was talks of, the Mutai Kagwe was quoted there saying, anyone else who comes talking about the COVID-19, if it is not this ministry or the president, just count that as any other press conference, which I think also made him feel like he was being targeted. I don't know. But then, Collins Bore, thank you very much for giving us your views on this, and I believe that really we will be watching closely what will transpire today. There's a list that is going to come out. I don't know. Both sides are going to produce their lists. I don't know if we'll be seeing names being duplicated here and there, but then at the end of the day, as we mentioned earlier, things are getting thick in the Jubilee party, and it's just a matter of when and not if. Collins Bore, thank you very much for finding time to be with us here. Viewer, we have come to the end of our program this morning. For comments, suggestions, or opinion, you can drop us an email on info@gbskenya.com. Also, you can keep the conversation going, of course, using our hashtag GBS Morning Extra. Our Twitter handle is @Kenya GBS TV. And I believe that you will have a great day. My name is Timothy Omondi. Do you have yourself a lovely day. Bye-bye for now.